ASML, it was fourth quarter 2024 and full year as well, so we've got a full range and rundown for you. So revenue was 9.26 billion. That was up 28% year on year. These are all in euros, by the way. That was a beat. Gross margin came in at 51.7%. Consensus was for 49.6, so it was another beat. EPS was 684. Consensus wanted 668, so another beat. Operating cash flow, Steve, just pretty much 3x consensus. Consensus wanted 3.66 billion, and ASML reported 9.545 billion. Net bookings, which is the best sort of indicator of future volume. Consensus wanted 3.5 billion, and ASML reported 7.1 billion, and 3 billion of that was EUV. So, just EUV alone was nearly at consensus. So, really impressive quarter for ASML. They did pretty well. They were up 11% on the news, but it fell back to about 5% by the end of the day. The guidance for the next quarter was also pretty strong. They said that revenues, gross profit, and SG&A all beat consensus expectations. They said that they expected revenue to grow around 46.5% year on year. So on the full year, 28.3 billion in revenue. That's a slight increase over last year. They did say that it was going to be a fairly flat year. 51.3% gross margin, 19.25 in EPS. That's 19 euros 25. They said revenue next year will be 30 to 35 billion. So the top end of that guide is like 30% growth. Pretty impressive. Is it? 30% growth. Wally. So on the call, there wasn't a lot in the call. There was a lot of the analysts really trying to figure out what they thought about DeepSeek, and they declined to comment on specifics with DeepSeek. But the CEO said that he sees no sign of a slowdown in demand for AI-focused chips from their end. He said that a lower cost of AI could actually just mean more applications of AI. More applications of AI means more demand over time. They see this as an opportunity for more chip demand, not rather than less, was what they said on an interview on Wednesday. They didn't know exactly what DeepSeek can or cannot do, but as they said, anything that drives down cost is good news for ASML in the long term. And said for AI to succeed, it has to go down in cost. Energy efficiency has to go up. And I can promise you that in our industry, he said, any innovation that has ever reduced cost has just gone on to create more volume and more opportunities for them. Really impressive set of earnings here from ASML, and you tend to get that with them. If they have a weak quarter for bookings, the next quarter tends to be really stellar, and that's what's happened again here, Steve. And I mean, if they can hit the top end of that guidance, if they can get those factories working and get 35 billion of revenue out last year, that'll be really, really impressive. One to stick on the old watch list again for me, Steve, and maybe buy some more. Who knows?
The stock had a bit of a drop after the kind of DeepSeek news. It was one of the ones, and it stayed down for a little bit until those earnings, and it's now pretty much back where it was, having undone that quite well. Whether that's because of the results themselves or because of the kind of comments around DeepSeek is, well, maybe there's not really worth speculating about. But when I looked at this, I sort of wondered for ASML because I hear the thought. I'm torn between two thoughts, and I don't know what the right thought is to have here. One is that the general vibe of DeepSeek is that it's possible to do more with less, and it's not just about a massive arms race in terms of piling up compute power. There are smarter things you can do with the compute power that you had. So NVIDIA's H800s, I think, which are lower powered Chinese road legal or export legal chips, had been building a machine that can outperform stuff based on the H100s, which are more powerful than the US thought. They'd basically blocked the Chinese off from them. Turns out they hadn't. That's probably on the face of it not a positive sign for ASML per se. I take the point about volumes of if people think, well, look, we can just buy cheaper chips, more of us will go and buy them in that case. And all we have to do is set them up this way. I'm reluctant to give up on the idea in my head, and as everyone knows, and I say this nearly every show, I'm not a semiconductor expert here, that the kind of difference in style and being smarter with what you do, I'm not sure why that wouldn't be applicable to H100s as well. Why you can't set those up in quite the same way to get more out of them, the way you can get more out of an A100 combined with an H800. And therefore kind of combine the power of the one with the efficiency of the other. don't know, maybe you can't do that, but I'm not in a position to tell you that one way or another. I mean, the way I picked up on this, Steve, was when the thing was down. I figured, long term, I struggle with what exactly I think of all this, and there's too many things that are too complicated for me. But I was also reasonably clear that with Trump in the White House, America is not going to let this kind of China. They're not going to let China get a lead on them in AI one way or another, and if they have to, they will cheat. Is the way I kind of thought about this, and I'm not sure they actually have just yet. It doesn't strike me as they would be beyond them, but I don't think they got round to it before the stock came bouncing back. So I preferred to have a look at this via the option market, and I figured within 6 months, one of a few things will happen. One is that the US will fire a huge amount into ASML. Another is that they will cut off China entirely from chips, but one way or another there will be a huge spend on this, that they will get to the point where ASML's chips matter and the prices go up on them quite a bit, because if they cut off volumes to China, that will make things more expensive for the States. And that will create problems in Taiwan, as both of us seem to think if they take that approach. But so I figured that sooner or later ASML is coming back here. I don't fully know why, and I don't fully know how. And I figured the way I would rather look at this is through sort of short-term options rather than long-term owning the stock. But I see the attraction of I like the idea of being confident enough to own this while people are busy running around thinking, is this bad for ASML? Is this good for ASML? I don't really know. I'm supposed to be a semiconductor analyst, but I'd better ask the company what they think about DeepSeek, because it turns out the company doesn't really care very much. So that doesn't help me a huge amount here. They're not particularly worried about what DeepSeek does or doesn't do. I prefer to be in this for a kind of short-term and obvious boost than the long-term and the more complicated stuff, to be honest. But did you buy this when it was down, Steve, or did you let this one go?
No, very tempted, but I didn't pick it up. Just on your earlier point, one of the ways of looking at and trying to figure out what's going to come to ASML is just to look at the memory and foundry businesses and just see what they're saying about their capex. Because if they're saying to you, look, we're going to cut capex by 95%, or they're doing Intel and say what we're going to do is not spend anything on R&D and capex and give it all out as a dividend, because we'll definitely stay in front that way. That would normally be a bad sign for ASML. And just to give you a quick rundown of what we've had so far, TSMC have promised capex spend that's up about 34% at the midpoint, so that's 36.5 to 48.5 billion. The Samsung, who are one of the big foundries, they've said they're actually going to slash the foundry capex by 50%, but I'm not sure I believe that, because we've still got to see their earnings, which are on the 31st. Intel report tonight, Steve, so it's Thursday as we record this. Be interesting to see what they're doing. Micron Technology are doubling. They're a memory company. They're doubling from 7.8 billion to around 14 billion. And SK Hynix have said they're going to go flat on year on year. So it's some decent spend there from SK Hynix as well. They're another foundry business. So interesting to see. Got Intel and Samsung to come. We will know a little bit more soon, but I think ASML are fairly confident.
You've been watching a segment from the Playing FTSE show, brought to you in association with our favourite broker, Trading 212. For the full version of the show, check us out on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you open a new account with Trading 212 using the link in the description, there's a free fractional share in it for you. Just make sure that you use the code FTSE when you sign up. Terms and conditions apply, and do remember that when investing, your capital is at risk.